My name is Valeria. I am 32 years old, and I built my digital marketing agency from nothing to a seven-figure business in just 4 years. Growing up, I watched my mom struggle as a single parent, working multiple jobs just to keep food on our table. That's why 2 years ago, when she lost her accounting job, I hired her as our office manager. Recently, though, something changed in her behavior. That Monday morning when I walked into my own office building, I had no idea my life was about to shatter. Before I share what happened that devastating morning, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please take a moment to like and subscribe if stories about family betrayal and business resilience resonate with you. Building my agency from scratch at 28 wasn't just a business decision, it was my survival instinct kicking in. I remember those early days in my cramped studio apartment, the walls so thin, I could hear my neighbor's alarm clock every morning at 5. That didn't matter though, because I was usually already awake, hunched over my laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as I crafted proposals for potential clients. My diet consisted mainly of instant ramen and black coffee, the cheapest fuel I could find to keep going through 18-hour workdays. My friends thought I was crazy. They were out enjoying their 20s, posting pictures from bars and beaches, while I was calculating how many packets of ramen $50 could buy. That $50 was significant because it was exactly what my first client, a local bakery called Sweet Dreams, paid me for a month of social media management. Mrs. Henderson, the bakery owner, took a chance on me when I had nothing but enthusiasm and a basic WordPress website to show. I treated her account like it was Apple or Nike, posting at optimal times, engaging with every single comment, photographing her pastries with my phone, and editing them until they looked magazine-worthy. Word spread slowly but steadily through our small business community. Year one was brutal. I lost 15 pounds I couldn't afford to lose, developed chronic back pain from my cheap desk chair, and cried myself to sleep more nights than I care to admit. My bank account stayed perpetually close to zero, and I had to move back in with my mom temporarily when I couldn't make rent. She'd make subtle comments about getting a real job, about how her friend's daughter just got promoted at the bank, about stability and benefits and retirement plans. But year two brought my breakthrough. A tech startup called Innovate Tech found my blog post about social media algorithms and reached out. They needed someone who understood both technology and marketing, someone hungry enough to work around their chaotic startup schedule. The founder, James Chen, offered me a retainer of $3,000 monthly. I literally fell to my knees in my apartment when I got his email, sobbing with relief. With steady income, I could finally think beyond survival. I invested in proper tools, took online courses, and started positioning myself as a specialist in tech company marketing. My work with Innovate Tech got noticed. They grew from 5 to 50 employees in 6 months, and everyone wanted to know who was behind their viral marketing campaigns. The pivotal moment came 18 months into my business journey. I was at a coffee shop wearing my only professional outfit when I overheard two executives discussing their marketing troubles. Their company had just fired their third agency in a year. My hands shook as I approached their table, business card ready. That impromptu pitch to Global Tech Solutions changed everything. They were a Fortune 500 subsidiary, and landing them meant real credibility. I'll never forget creating their campaign strategy. I worked 72 hours straight, powered by determination and probably dangerous amounts of caffeine. The presentation had 47 slides each, meticulously designed, every strategy backed by data I'd painstakingly researched. When they signed a six-figure annual contract, I sat in my car in their parking lot and called my mom, barely able to speak through my tears. With Global Tech's endorsement growth exploded. I hired Sarah first, a brilliant content strategist I'd met at a marketing conference where I'd volunteered just to afford attending. She believed in my vision when it was still just scrambled notes in my journal. Next came Marcus, a developer who could make websites sing, then Jenna in customer service, then 7 more talented individuals who chose to bet on our small but mighty team. Finding our downtown office space felt surreal. The building had glass walls, polished concrete floors, and enough room for 20 desks. I spent my entire savings on the deposit and first month's rent, but seeing our company logo on that door made every sacrifice worth it. The conference room had a view of the city skyline, and I'd sometimes stay late just to watch the sunset reflect off the buildings, pinching myself that this was real. My personal life paid the price for professional success. David, my boyfriend of 3 years, couldn't understand why I worked weekends, why I answered emails at midnight, why I chose client meetings over vacation plans. He called me obsessed, said I loved my company more than him. He wasn't wrong. The night he left, I worked until dawn on a proposal. Success felt lonely sometimes. Mom attended our office opening party, tears streaming down her face as she watched me cut the ribbon. She kept telling everyone she met that her daughter was a CEO, that she always knew I'd make something of myself. The pride in her eyes made all those dismissive comments about real jobs disappear. She brought homemade cookies, charmed my employees, and took about 100 photos. 10 months later, when she called crying about losing her job after 20 years with the same accounting firm, I didn't hesitate. She'd sacrificed everything raising me alone after Dad left. Hiring her as office manager seemed like the perfect solution. She needed work. I needed someone I could trust with administrative duties, and it would bring us closer together. Her first weeks were wonderful. She arrived early, stayed late, organized our chaotic filing system, and brought a maternal warmth to the office. The team adored her, calling her Mama Val, looking forward to her Friday baked goods. She managed schedules efficiently, remembered everyone's birthdays, and even helped negotiate better rates with vendors using her years of experience. Small things started shifting after about 6 months. She rearranged my office one weekend without asking, saying the feng shui was all wrong. She changed our filing system again, insisting her way was superior, even though we'd just trained everyone on the original method. During team meetings, she'd make comments about young people not understanding how real business worked, always with a laugh, like it was just gentle teasing. I noticed her suggesting improvements to systems that were functioning perfectly. Our client intake process, which I'd refined over 2 years, suddenly needed overhauling according to her. She started CCing herself on emails she didn't need to see, showing up to meetings she wasn't invited to, always with some excuse about just wanting to help or learn. The first serious boundary crossing happened when she attended a client meeting with Morrison Industries without telling me. I walked into the conference room to find her presenting a completely different strategy than what I'd prepared. The clients looked confused, glancing between us as she contradicted points I'd made in previous discussions. My face burned with embarrassment as I tried to redirect without undermining her in front of clients. Afterward, when I confronted her privately, she seemed genuinely hurt. She reminded me of her 30 years in business, how she'd been managing accounts before I was born. The tears came quickly, followed by stories about sacrificing her career to raise me, about how she just wanted to contribute meaningfully to the success she'd helped create by raising such a capable daughter. I backed down, apologizing for overreacting, promising to include her more. Looking back, that was my crucial mistake. That moment of guilt-driven weakness opened a door I should have kept firmly closed. 3 months before the incident that changed everything, the power dynamics in my company started shifting in ways I couldn't initially understand. Mom began attending client meetings regularly, always finding reasons why her presence was necessary. She'd claim she needed to understand our processes better, or that she had insights from her accounting background that could help. At first, clients seemed charmed by the mother-daughter dynamic, but that quickly changed. The Morrison Industries incident was just the beginning. During a crucial strategy presentation for their Q4 campaign, Mom interrupted me mid-sentence to suggest a completely different approach. Not a minor adjustment or helpful addition, but a fundamental contradiction of the data-driven strategy I'd spent weeks developing. She stood up, walked to the whiteboard, and started drawing diagrams while I stood there speechless. Mr. Morrison's eyes darted between us, clearly uncomfortable. His marketing director, Sandra, who I'd built a strong relationship with over 2 years, looked at me with concern. Mom continued talking about traditional marketing methods, print advertisements, and strategies that were obsolete 5 years ago. When she finally finished, the room sat in awkward silence, until Mr. Morrison diplomatically suggested we regroup internally and return with a unified approach. The walk back to my office after that meeting felt like a funeral march. Mom, however, seemed energized, chatting about how well she thought it went, how refreshing it must be for clients to hear from someone with real experience. When I tried explaining how she'd undermined my credibility, she responded with practiced hurt, her voice trembling as she accused me of being ashamed of her. That's when the guilt manipulation intensified. Every boundary I tried to set was met with emotional warfare. She'd bring up sleeping in her car during the divorce, so I could stay in our apartment. She'd mentioned missing meals so I could eat working 3 jobs to pay for my school supplies. All true, all sacrifices I deeply appreciated, but now weaponized to justify her increasing overreach. I started noticing employees going to her instead of me for approvals. Simple things. At first, vacation requests, supply orders, schedule changes. Then bigger issues, project decisions, client communications, even salary discussions. Sarah pulled me aside one afternoon, closing my office door carefully before speaking. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she revealed what had been happening. Mom was holding morning briefings when I traveled, telling the team about changes to company policy I'd never approved. She'd been promising raises, discussing restructuring plans, even hinting at franchising opportunities. The most shocking revelation was that Mom had been telling certain employees that I was considering selling the company and that she was helping evaluate potential buyers. That's when I discovered the email signature. A client forwarded me a message from Mom signed as Senior Operations Director of Valeria Marketing Solutions. I'd never approved that title. She was office manager, a position I'd created specifically for her. When I checked our email system, I found she'd been using this title for over a month, corresponding with clients, vendors, and even potential partners. The unauthorized discount situation nearly cost us a major client. Mom's church friend, Mrs. Patterson, wanted marketing services for her essential oils business. Without consulting me, Mom offered a 20% discount on our premium package, plus additional services we didn't even offer. When Mrs. Patterson arrived expecting her special deal, I had to honor it to avoid embarrassment eating into our already tight margins. During our confrontation about these boundaries, Mom's tears came fast and heavy. She collapsed into the chair across from my desk, shoulders shaking, makeup running. Between sobs, she painted herself as a mother just trying to help her ungrateful daughter. She brought up every sacrifice, every struggle, every moment of our difficult past. My father leaving when I was 7. The night she cried herself to sleep. The jobs she took that were beneath her education level, all to provide for me. She accused me of becoming arrogant, of forgetting where I came from, of treating her like an employee instead of the woman who gave me life. The manipulation was masterful. By the end of that conversation, I was the one apologizing, promising to be more inclusive, more appreciative, more understanding of her desire to contribute. 2 weeks before the ultimate betrayal, I discovered Mom had changed the passwords to our main office computers. When I confronted her, she claimed it was for security purposes. She'd received a suspicious email and wanted to protect our systems. It sounded reasonable enough, except our IT specialist Jerome later told me privately that Mom had been asking about administrator access, about backup systems, about who had ultimate control over our digital infrastructure. Jerome was nervous telling me this, constantly checking over his shoulder. He showed me logs of Mom accessing files she had no business viewing, client contracts, financial records, even my personal correspondence with our business attorney. She'd been systematically gathering information, downloading files to USB drives after hours. The family dinner ambush happened that same week. Mom invited me to what I thought was a casual Sunday dinner at Aunt Carol's house. Instead, I walked into an intervention. Uncle Stephen, Aunt Carol, my cousins Maria and Tony, even my grandmother's sister Agnes had gathered to discuss my treatment of my mother. They sat in a circle like some kind of tribunal, each taking turns expressing disappointment in how I'd forgotten family values. Maria, who worked retail and constantly posted about hustle culture, without actually hustling, accused me of being power hungry. Uncle Stephen, who'd driven his own business into bankruptcy twice, lectured about respecting elders in the workplace. Aunt Carol cried about how success had changed me, made me cold. Mom sat in the center, the wounded matriarch occasionally dabbing her eyes with a tissue, while others defended her honor. She told them stories of my cruelty, how I humiliated her in front of employees, how I treated her like a servant, how I was planning to fire her once the business was stable enough. All lies, but delivered with such conviction that my own family looked at me like I was a monster. I tried defending myself, explaining the boundary violations, the undermining of my authority, the inappropriate behavior. But every example I gave was met with excuse-making. That's just how she shows love. She's trying to help. You should be grateful. No one believed that sweet, sacrificing, long-suffering Mom could be capable of sabotage. The dinner ended with an ultimatum from Uncle Stephen. Either I gave Mom more authority in the company, made her a real partner, or the family would have to reconsider their support of my success. The threat was vague but clear. They'd turn their backs on me, spread stories in our community, make me choose between family and business. Driving home that night, rain pelting against my windshield, I felt more alone than ever. The woman who raised me had turned my own family against me, painted me as an ungrateful daughter drunk on power. But I still didn't see the final betrayal coming. I thought we could work through it, find balance, establish boundaries that would satisfy everyone. I spent the next week trying to create a compromise. I drew up a new organizational chart with expanded responsibilities for Mom, though still maintaining my position as owner and CEO. I scheduled a meeting for Monday morning to present this peace offering to show her I valued her contribution while maintaining necessary professional boundaries. Sunday night, I went to bed feeling hopeful. Maybe we could salvage this. Maybe family and business could coexist. Maybe Mom would see my compromise as the gesture of love and respect it was meant to be. I set my alarm for 6, wanting to arrive early to prepare the conference room for our discussion. I had no idea that while I slept, Mom was at the office with a locksmith changing the locks on the building I'd leased the doors I'd paid for the dream I'd built from nothing. She was there with forged documents, fake board resolutions, and a plan that would reveal the depth of her betrayal. The mother who'd raised me, who'd sacrificed for me, who claimed to love me more than life itself, was preparing to steal everything I'd created. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that made downtown feel oppressive. I arrived at our building at 8:30, coffee in one hand, presentation materials in the other, actually feeling optimistic about resolving things with Mom. The security guard William, who'd always greeted me with a warm smile and comments about the weather, stood awkwardly by the entrance, his face drawn with discomfort. "Ms. Valeria," he started, then stopped, looking over his shoulder toward the lobby. "There's a situation." Before I could ask what he meant, I saw her through the glass doors. Mom stood in the center of our lobby wearing my favorite blazer, the one I'd bought to celebrate landing global tech, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. My stomach dropped as I pushed through the doors. The officers straightened as Mom pointed at me, her face a mask of professional concern. "This is my daughter," she announced, her voice carrying across the marble floors. "She's been terminated from the company due to serious misconduct and mental health concerns." The words hit me like physical blows. Terminated. From my own company. The company I'd built from nothing, bled for, sacrificed everything to create. I stood there, rain damp and stunned, as Mom produced a folder of official-looking documents. She held them up for the officers to see, though they seemed as confused as I was. According to these board resolutions, she continued, her voice steady and authoritative, ownership and control of Valeria Marketing Solutions was transferred to me last week due to Valeria's inability to manage the company responsibly. She's been showing signs of severe stress, paranoia, and erratic behavior that endangered our client relationships. My mind struggled to process what was happening. What board? We didn't have a board. I was the sole owner, had been since day one. But the documents looked real, official letterhead signatures, dates. My signature, though, I'd never signed anything like this. The officers looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with what seemed to be a family business dispute. Mom turned to address the 20 employees who'd gathered in the glass-walled conference room, drawn by the commotion. Their faces ranged from shocked to confused to afraid. These were people I'd hired, mentored, built professional relationships with, and now they were witnessing my humiliation. "I need to inform you all," Mom announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd rehearsed this moment, "that Valeria is no longer relevant to this organization. Her recent behavior has made it clear that she lacks the maturity and stability necessary to lead. Young people often think they know everything, but experience matters. This company needs seasoned leadership to survive." The word irrelevant echoed in my skull. After everything I'd built, I was irrelevant. Sarah stepped forward from the group, her face flushed with anger. "This isn't right," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "Valeria founded this company. She is this company. We all know that." Mom's expression hardened as she turned to Sarah. "Any employee who questions this transition will be terminated immediately for insubordination. I suggest you all return to work. There will be a full staff meeting at noon to discuss the new direction of the company." My key card wouldn't work. I stood at the door I'd entered thousands of times, waving the card that had always granted me access to my own office, my own dream, and nothing happened. The little red light blinked mockingly. Mom watched with satisfaction as I tried again and again, desperation growing with each failed attempt. "Your personal items have been packed," she said, gesturing to a cardboard box sitting by the reception desk. I walked over in a daze, seeing my life reduced to a banker's box. My diplomas, the photo of Dad and me from before he left, the first dollar our company ever earned, framed and signed by Mrs. Henderson from the bakery, my awards from the Marketing Excellence Foundation, all unceremoniously dumped together. Marcus tried to speak up, starting to say something about this being illegal, but Mom cut him off with a look that promised unemployment. Others stared at the floor, afraid to meet my eyes, afraid for their jobs in this economy. I understood their silence, but it still hurt. These people I'd considered my professional family were watching me be erased. The worst part was seeing Mom sit at my desk, visible through the glass walls of my office. My office. She'd arranged herself in my chair, hands folded on my desk, looking every inch the executive she'd always wanted to be. She was wearing my blazer, using my favorite pen, surrounded by the success I'd built from nothing. Her smile as security escorted me out was something I'll never forget. It wasn't triumphant exactly, more like satisfied, as if everything had gone according to plan. "It's for your own good, sweetheart," she called out as I passed. "When you're feeling better, when you've had time to rest and recover, you'll understand I did this from love." The two officers followed us outside, clearly unsure of their role in this drama. One of them, a younger guy with kind eyes, pulled me aside. "Miss, if this is your company, you need to contact a lawyer. This doesn't seem right." But without immediate proof, there was nothing they could do. It was a civil matter, he explained, not a criminal one. I stood on the sidewalk in the rain, holding my pathetic box of belongings, watching through the windows as Mom called an impromptu meeting. My employees, looking confused and scared, gathered around her in the conference room. She was animated, gesturing broadly, probably selling them her vision of the company's future under her experienced leadership. Some clients were in the waiting area for meetings I was supposed to lead. I recognized Mrs. Chen from Sunrise Hospitality and Mr. Roberts from the accounting firm. They watched my humiliation with a mixture of surprise and secondhand embarrassment. By noon, everyone in our professional community would know about this scene. The final indignity came when I tried to get into my car. The company car I'd leased, paid for with company funds I'd earned, was gone. Mom had it towed over the weekend, claiming ownership since it was a company asset, and she now controlled the company. I stood there in the rain, no car, no office, no company, reduced to calling an Uber like an intern fired for incompetence. The driver who picked me up took one look at my face and didn't try to make conversation. I sat in the backseat box on my lap, watching my office building disappear in the rearview mirror. 7 years of my life, 4 years of building this company, and it had been stolen in a single morning by the person I trusted most. My phone buzzed with messages. Clients asking about the scene they'd witnessed, employees asking if it was true, competitors probably already circling like vultures. But I couldn't respond. I couldn't form words to explain that my own mother had forged documents, staged a coup, and stolen my life's work, while claiming it was for my own good. The coffee shop where I'd written my first business plan became my temporary refuge. The same corner table where I dreamed of success now held my box of discarded achievements. My hands shook as I called Jennifer, my lawyer friend from college. She listened in stunned silence as I explained the morning's events, occasionally asking me to repeat details that seemed too outrageous to be real. "These documents are clearly forged," she said after I'd sent her photos of what Mom had shown the police. "But proving that takes time. She could do a lot of damage before we get an injunction. We need evidence of the forgery proof of your ownership witnesses to any planning she might have done." As I sat there trying to think clearly through the shock, my phone pinged with a text from Jerome in IT. "Just check your personal email," it read. "Urgent, can't use company systems. She's watching everything." I opened my laptop in that coffee shop, fingers trembling as I logged into my personal email. Jerome had sent files from an encrypted account, the subject line reading simply, "Documentation you need to see." As I downloaded the attachments, my heart raced with a mixture of hope and dread. What had our quiet IT specialist risked his job to share? The first file was an audio recording. Jerome's message explained he'd started recording after noticing unusual activity on Mom's computer. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. Mom's voice filled my ears, but she wasn't talking to me or any employee. The other voice belonged to Richard Steinberg, owner of Steinberg Marketing Group, our biggest competitor. The package we discussed is almost ready for delivery, Mom said in the recording. I just need a few more days to ensure the transition appears legitimate. Once I have full control, we can proceed with the acquisition immediately. My stomach churned as Richard's voice responded with satisfaction about the terms they'd negotiated. $2 million, he confirmed. 1.5 for the company assets and client list, another 500,000 for your consulting contract over the next 2 years, and of course the vice president position we discussed. Your daughter built something valuable, Margaret. It's a shame she couldn't see the bigger picture. Mom's response made my blood freeze. Valeria is too naive to run a real business. She got lucky, built something beyond her capabilities. I gave birth to her. I raised her alone. I deserve to benefit from her success. She owes me this. Besides, she'll be better off. The stress was destroying her. I'm doing her a favor. The recording continued for 20 minutes. They discussed timeline transfer logistics, which employees to keep, which to fire. Sarah was on the termination list for being too loyal to me. Marcus would be kept but demoted. They planned to gut the company culture I'd carefully built, turning it into another soulless corporate machine, focused solely on profit margins. Jerome had included screenshots of emails dating back 3 months. Mom had been secretly negotiating this deal while smiling at me across the dinner table, while accepting my comfort about her job loss, while I defended her to employees who questioned her behavior. The betrayal went deeper than stolen company assets. She'd been planning this while I was trying to find ways to give her more authority. The email trail revealed she'd been systematically sabotaging client relationships. Messages to Mr. Morrison suggesting I was having a mental breakdown, hints to Technova that I was considering shutting down the company, warnings to smaller clients that they should have backup agencies ready. She'd been planting seeds of doubt while I worked 18-hour days to deliver excellence. One email made me gasp audibly, causing other coffee shop patrons to look over with concern. Mom had accessed our financial records and borrowed $100,000 against company assets without my knowledge. The loan documents were in her name, but secured by our accounts receivable. She'd been spending this money on herself, personal shopping sprees, a planned luxury vacation to Europe, even a down payment on a condo. Sarah's name appeared on my phone. I answered immediately. She was whispering, calling from a bathroom stall at the office. "Your mom is in full takeover mode," she said urgently. "She's already called all our major clients telling them you had a psychotic break. Half the team wants to quit, but she's threatening to blacklist anyone who contacts you. She's saying she has connections throughout the industry, that she'll destroy anyone who supports you." "But here's the important part," Sarah continued. 17 of us are ready to walk out the moment you give the signal. We didn't spend years building something amazing just to hand it over to someone who didn't earn it. Marcus has been backing up everything to his personal drives. Even the new hires see this is wrong. My phone buzzed with another message. Jennifer had forwarded me something from Facebook. Mom had posted in our extended family group and her church community page. It was a long, dramatic post about having to step in to save the family business from my mental health crisis. She claimed I'd been exhibiting signs of bipolar disorder, that I'd threatened employees, that I'd been making dangerous business decisions. The comments were pouring in. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were offering prayers and support for Mom's courage. Church members were praising her strength as a mother. Everyone was buying her narrative of the sacrificing mother saving her troubled daughter's company. She'd even posted photos of herself in my office behind my desk with captions about the burden of leadership. Aunt Carol had shared the post with additional commentary about how she'd seen this coming, how I'd become arrogant and unstable, how success had gone to my head. Cousin Maria added her own testimony about my power-hungry behavior at the family dinner, conveniently leaving out that it was an orchestrated ambush. The most painful comment came from someone unexpected. Rodriguez, my high school guidance counselor, who'd written my college recommendation letters, expressed disappointment that I'd treated my mother so poorly after everything she'd sacrificed. Even people who'd watched me grow up, who knew my work ethic and character, were believing Mom's carefully crafted fiction. I started creating a timeline document, organizing every piece of evidence Jerome had sent. The pattern became clear. 3 months ago, right after I'd given Mom a raise and expanded her responsibilities, she'd started talking to Richard. The timing wasn't coincidental. My gesture of generosity and inclusion had been the trigger. She'd seen my trust as weakness, my love as opportunity. More recordings revealed the depth of her entitlement. In one conversation with Richard, she spent 10 minutes listing everything she'd given up for me, every sacrifice, every struggle, building a case for why she deserved to take what I'd built. It's not really stealing, she reasoned. A mother has rights to what her child creates. I made her who she is. Without me, she'd be nothing. Richard, to his credit, seemed occasionally uncomfortable with her rationalization, but was too focused on acquiring my client list to care about the morality. He saw an opportunity to eliminate competition and grab market share. Mom was just the vehicle for his ambition, though she didn't seem to realize she was being used. The forged documents were almost impressive in their thoroughness. Mom had created an entire fictional board of directors, complete with signatures from people who didn't exist. She'd fabricated meeting minutes resolutions, even a psychological evaluation, claiming I was unfit to lead. The evaluation was supposedly from a Dr. Harrison, but a quick search revealed no such psychiatrist existed in our state. She'd been studying my signature for months, practicing it. Jerome found dozens of attempts in her deleted files, each one getting closer to perfect. The final forgery on the transfer documents was good enough to fool a casual observer, though a forensic analyst would easily spot the differences. The security footage Jerome saved showed Mom entering the building at 2 a.m. Sunday night with a locksmith. She'd told him she was the owner, that she'd lost her keys, that it was an emergency. She'd paid cash, no questions asked. The footage showed her changing the locks, then sitting in my chair, feet up on my desk, looking around with an expression of triumph. The plan had been meticulous. She'd waited until she knew I'd be alone, no boyfriend to support me, family turned against me, employees scared for their jobs. She'd isolated me systematically, making sure that when the moment came, I'd have nowhere to turn. What she hadn't counted on was Jerome's paranoid habit of backing up everything, and Sarah's fierce loyalty. Jennifer called back with a strategy. We need to move fast and publicly. If we can expose the fraud before she solidifies control, we can stop this. I want you to compile everything into one comprehensive package. Every recording, every email, every piece of evidence. We're going to send it simultaneously to all clients, all employees, the business press, and law enforcement. But first, Jennifer said, let's get the 3 biggest clients on a video call. If Mom loses Global Tech Morrison and Technova, the company becomes worthless to Richard. They signed contracts with you, not her. Let's remind them of that fact. That evening, I transformed my tiny apartment into a war room. Jennifer arrived with her laptop and legal documents, while I set up for the most important video call of my life. We had one shot to convince my 3 biggest clients that they were about to be victims of fraud. The future of everything I'd built depended on the next hour. Mr. Morrison joined the call first, his face skeptical but concerned. He'd been with us for 2 years and had always appreciated my direct communication style. Sandra from Technova appeared next, looking tired after what had probably been a confusing day of mixed messages. Finally, James from Global Tech connected the man who'd given me my first real break. Thank you for taking this emergency call. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. What I'm about to share will be shocking, but I have documented evidence of everything. Your contracts and your companies are at risk. Jennifer shared her screen displaying the forged documents first. These were presented to police this morning as legitimate transfer documents, she explained with lawyer-like precision. As you can see from the forensic analysis, the signatures are forgeries. There is no board of directors. Valeria is, and always has been, the sole owner of the company. We played the first recording of Mom and Richard discussing the sale. James's expression darkened as he heard Richard mention accessing Global Tech's proprietary marketing data as part of the acquisition value. Sandra gasped when Mom described manipulating their trust to facilitate the takeover. Mr. Morrison's jaw clenched when he heard his company mentioned as naive enough to believe anything. "This is corporate theft," Mr. Morrison said flatly. "We signed with Valeria, not her mother. Our contract has specific clauses about ownership changes requiring our approval. If this takeover stands, we're pulling our entire account immediately and pursuing legal action." Sandra was already typing on her phone. "I'm sending this to our legal team right now. We have a strict policy about vendor ethics violations. Fraud and forgery are immediate disqualifiers. We'll be issuing a formal statement by morning demanding Valeria's immediate reinstatement or contract termination." James, my first major client, looked directly at the camera. "Valeria, you built something special. Your mother might have given you life, but you gave life to this company. Global Tech stands with you. If you're not running the agency by end of business tomorrow, we're gone and we're taking our referrals with us." Their support meant everything, but we needed more. Jennifer had drafted an email exposing everything, attaching all evidence, ready to send to our entire employee list, media contacts, and industry associations. But I hesitated. Despite everything, she was still my mother. Once we sent this, there would be no going back. Sarah texted that Mom was already making changes. She'd fired 2 junior employees who'd questioned her authority, canceled several of my initiatives, and was planning to announce the Steinberg acquisition at tomorrow's all-hands meeting. She was moving fast to establish facts on the ground before anyone could respond. The email blast went out at 9 p.m. The subject line read, "Evidence of illegal takeover attempt at Valeria Marketing Solutions." Within minutes, responses flooded in. Employees forwarded it to their network's clients, demanded explanations. Competitors started calling to express shock and oddly support. Even rivals recognized that this kind of betrayal was bad for everyone. The local business reporter Kevin Walsh called within an hour. He'd been covering our growth story for 2 years and couldn't believe what he was reading. "Is this really happening?" he asked. "Your own mother." I confirmed everything, giving him an exclusive interview that would run online within hours and in print the next morning. The story exploded on business Twitter. The hashtag corporate mother betrayal started trending locally. LinkedIn was ablaze with discussions about family businesses, professional boundaries, and corporate fraud. Mom had wanted attention for her takeover. She got it, just not the kind she'd expected. Richard Steinberg called Mom's cell repeatedly, our office cameras showing her pacing frantically as she tried to explain why their secret deal was suddenly public. His lawyers were probably screaming about liability, about being named as co-conspirators in corporate theft. The acquisition was dead before it started. Mom's voicemails to me evolved through the stages of grief at rapid speed. The first was angry. "How dare you destroy our family like this, you ungrateful child? I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me." The second was bargaining. "Please, let's talk about this privately. We can work something out. I'll give you back the company if you retract the statements." The third was threatening. "You'll regret this. I'll tell everyone about your breakdowns, your instability. No one will ever work with you again. I'll destroy your reputation." The fourth was pleading. "Please, sweetheart, I'm your mother. I made a mistake. Don't do this to me. I was trying to protect you." By midnight, 17 employees had signed a letter stating they would resign if Mom remained in control. They'd sent it to her, to me, to the clients, and to the media. Marcus had changed all the digital passwords, locking Mom out of systems, while maintaining service for clients. It was a soft coup against her hard coup. The building security company called. After reviewing the footage of Mom breaking in with the locksmith, they were concerned about liability. They'd be changing the locks back to the original configuration first thing in the morning and requiring proper ownership documentation for access. Mom's carefully orchestrated takeover was crumbling within 24 hours of its execution. My phone rang with an unknown number. It was the locksmith Mom had hired. He'd seen the news story and was horrified he'd been used in a fraud. He offered to provide an affidavit about Mom's deception, how she'd claimed to be the owner, how she'd paid cash to avoid paperwork. Every aspect of her plan was unraveling. Uncle Stephen texted, then called. The family Facebook post had been deleted after someone shared my evidence in the comments. The relatives who'd rushed to support Mom were now backpedaling, claiming they'd been misled, that they never would have taken sides if they'd known the truth. The family tribunal that had judged me so harshly was dissolving into embarrassed silence. Even Aunt Carol, Mom's biggest supporter, sent a message. I had no idea, Valeria. She told us you were having a breakdown. She showed us fake text messages from you saying horrible things. We should have known better. We should have talked to you directly. I'm so sorry. As the night wore on, the momentum shifted entirely. What had started as Mom's triumphant takeover was becoming a case study in corporate fraud. Business schools would probably teach this as an example of how not to handle succession planning. Mom had wanted to be remembered in business history. She would be just not how she'd imagined. By 3 a.m., I finally collapsed on my couch, still in the clothes I'd worn to what was supposed to be a peacemaking meeting. Jennifer had gone home with promises to file emergency injunctions at courthouse opening. Sarah had sent a final update that Mom had left the office in tears after Richard's lawyers formally withdrew from any association with her. The office I'd been locked out of that morning would be mine again by tomorrow. The employees who'd watched my humiliation would witness my vindication. The clients who'd seen me escorted out would see justice served. But none of it felt like victory. The person who'd raised me, who I'd trusted above all others, had tried to destroy me out of greed and jealousy. Tomorrow would bring resolution, but tonight I grieved. Not for the company that would survive, not for the reputation that would recover, but for the relationship with my mother that had died the moment she decided her entitlement mattered more than my achievements. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal. This was one of them. Tuesday morning arrived bright and clear. The rain from yesterday replaced by crisp sunshine that felt like nature's own vindication. My phone had been buzzing since 5 a.m. with calls from reporters, clients, and numbers I didn't recognize. At 6 a.m., Mom's text came through with just 2 words that carried the weight of her collapse. Emergency. Please. I arrived at the office at 7 to find police cars in the parking lot and Mom in the lobby, no longer wearing my blazer, but her old cardigan looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The building owner, Mr. Chen, stood with 2 officers, explaining that he'd pressed charges for breaking and entering after reviewing the security footage. The locksmith had already provided his statement about being deceived. The clients had acted even faster than expected. Morrison Industries hadn't just threatened to pull their account. They'd arrived with their legal team at 6:30 a.m., serving cease and desist papers and demanding immediate restoration of the rightful leadership. Their lawyers made it clear that Mom's forgery constituted fraud against their corporation, a felony that could result in significant jail time. Technova had gone further. They'd initiated a forensic audit overnight, discovering the unauthorized loan Mom had taken against company assets. Their CFO, a stern woman named Patricia, who didn't suffer fools, stood in the lobby with printouts of every financial irregularity. "This is embezzlement," she stated flatly to the officers. "We're prepared to file criminal charges if necessary." Global Tech's response was the most devastating for Mom. James had called Richard Steinberg, directly informing him that any company associated with this theft would be blacklisted from Global Tech's extensive vendor network. Richard's lawyers had arrived at 6 a.m., with documentation distancing themselves from Mom, claiming they'd been deceived about the legitimacy of the acquisition. Mom's breakdown was complete. She sat in the lobby chair where just yesterday she'd orchestrated my humiliation, now sobbing uncontrollably. I was trying to protect the family legacy she kept repeating to anyone who would listen. "I built this too. I sacrificed everything. I deserve something." The officers were patient but firm. "Ma'am, you've admitted to forgery, breaking and entering, and fraud. You need to come with us for formal questioning." Mom looked at me then, desperation replacing her yesterday's triumph. "Tell them, Valeria. Tell them I'm your mother. Tell them this is just a misunderstanding." I stood there remembering her words from yesterday. Irrelevant. That's what she'd called me in front of my employees, my clients, my professional community. She'd tried to erase me from my own story, and now wanted me to save her from the consequences. I remained silent. The employees had started arriving, and something beautiful happened. They physically blocked Mom from entering the office when she tried to push past the police tape. Sarah stood at the front, arms crossed, backed by Marcus Jerome and 14 others. "We work for Valeria," Sarah announced loudly. "You're trespassing." Mom's final manipulation attempt was desperate even for her. "Your father would be ashamed of you," she spat at me loud enough for everyone to hear. "He left because he knew what you'd become. Cold, heartless, ambitious beyond your worth." That's when I finally spoke. "Dad left because of your controlling behavior, Mom. He contacted me last year. He told me about the patterns, the manipulation, the way you tried to take over his business, too. He warned me to be careful. I didn't listen soon enough. The shock on Mom's face was complete. She hadn't known Dad and I had reconnected, that he'd shared his side of the story I'd only heard through her filter for 25 years. The fabrication of my childhood, built on her narrative of abandonment, crumbled in that moment. Mr. Chen, the building owner, made the situation even worse for Mom. She violated multiple lease terms with her illegal entry. I'm terminating any access immediately and preparing a civil suit for damages. The locksmith she hired damaged 2 doors that need replacement. The forensic audit Patricia had initiated revealed more than anyone expected. Mom hadn't just stolen $40,000 in cash. She'd set up a hidden account in the Cayman Islands, preparing to flee once the Steinberg deal completed. She'd been planning to take the money and run, leaving me with nothing and everyone else unemployed. The employees started sharing their own stories. Marcus revealed Mom had threatened his visa status if he didn't support her. Jennifer from accounting admitted Mom had promised her my job if she helped falsify financial records. Tom from sales said Mom had tried to get him to record me saying negative things about clients. Each revelation painted a picture of systematic conspiracy. Uncle Stephen arrived having driven 2 hours after seeing the morning news. He looked between Mom and me, his face gray with shame. "We had no idea," he said to me, then turned to Mom. "Margaret, you told us she was on drugs. You said she was having psychotic episodes. You used our family love to support your crime." Aunt Carol was right behind him, mascara streaking down her face. She showed us fake text messages, screenshots of horrible things Valeria supposedly said about all of us. We thought we were having an intervention to save her. You used us as weapons against your own daughter. Mom's church friends arrived next, the ones she'd hired recently. They resigned on the spot, horrified to learn they'd been part of a criminal conspiracy. Mrs. Patterson, who'd received the unauthorized discount, offered to pay the full price and testified that Mom had presented herself as the owner when making the deal. Richard Steinberg himself showed up flanked by lawyers, wanting to make his position crystal clear in front of witnesses. "We were deceived," he announced to the assembled crowd. Mrs. Margaret presented fraudulent documents and claimed to be the rightful owner. Steinberg Marketing Group is a victim in this matter and will cooperate fully with authorities. I knew he was lying about being deceived. The recordings made it clear he knew exactly what was happening. But his public disavowal meant Mom had lost her only ally, her only escape route. The $2 million deal was gone. The VP position was gone. The future she'd orchestrated through betrayal had evaporated. Mom was formally arrested at 9:15 a.m. The charges included fraud, forgery, embezzlement, breaking and entering, and identity theft. As the officers cuffed her, she looked at me one more time. "I'm your mother," she said, as if that fact alone should override all her crimes. "You were my mother," I replied quietly. "But mothers don't do this to their children. Mothers don't steal their daughters' dreams. Mothers don't call their children irrelevant. You stopped being my mother the moment you decided your greed mattered more than my success." The employees applauded as the police car drove away. It wasn't celebration exactly, more like relief, like waking from a nightmare to find reality restored. Sarah hugged me, then Marcus, then everyone else surrounding me with the chosen family that had proven their loyalty when tested. We held an all-hands meeting at 10 a.m. I stood where Mom had stood yesterday, but I didn't need to assert authority. These people had chosen me, had risked their jobs for me, had stood up to a woman who'd threatened their livelihoods. I thanked them, raised their salaries on the spot, and promised that trust would define our culture going forward. The clients were even more supportive. Morrison increased their contract by 30%, impressed by how we'd handled the crisis. Technova offered to recommend us to 3 other companies in their network. Global Tech's James publicly tweeted about our integrity, calling us the gold standard for ethical business practices. By noon, the story had gone national. Business Insider, Forbes, even the Wall Street Journal picked up the tale of the mother who tried to steal her daughter's company. Mom had wanted fame in the business world. She got at becoming the poster child for how family and business should never mix without proper boundaries. The investigation would reveal even more over the coming days. Mom had been planning this for 6 months, not 3. She'd been studying corporate takeover strategies, reading about hostile acquisitions, preparing for the moment she could strike. The job loss that had prompted me to hire her might have even been orchestrated, though we'd never prove that. The 40,000 she'd stolen had been spent on consultants who'd helped her forge documents on lawyers, who'd since disappeared on setting up offshore accounts on bribes to people she'd thought could help her plan succeed. The woman who'd raised me on budgets and sacrifice had gambled everything on stealing what I'd earned. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. Dad arrived from Portland, where he'd been living, having seen the news. We sat in my restored office, him in the chair Mom had occupied during her brief reign, both of us processing the surreal nature of the situation. She did the same thing to me 25 years ago, he revealed. I had a small construction business. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. She slowly took over, pushed me out, then sold it while we were divorcing. I didn't fight hard enough. I see now I should have warned you sooner. We talked for hours about patterns, about recognition, about the danger of trusting someone just because they're family. He apologized for leaving, for not fighting harder for custody, for letting Mom's narrative define our relationship for so long. I forgave him. We'd both been victims of the same manipulator, just decades apart. The weeks following Mom's arrest became a masterclass in rebuilding and healing. The legal process moved forward, with Mom accepting a plea deal that included restitution, probation, and a restraining order keeping her away from me and the business. She avoided jail time, which part of me was grateful for despite everything. I didn't want my mother in prison. I just wanted my life back. She moved to another state to live with her sister, Aunt Patricia, who I'd barely known growing up, because Mom had feuded with her over something trivial years ago. Patricia called me once to apologize for not being there during my childhood, explaining that Mom had systematically pushed away anyone who might challenge her control. The patterns were generational, learned from their own mother, who'd been similarly manipulative. The company restructuring happened quickly but thoughtfully. I implemented new security protocols requiring board approval for any family member employment, though I doubted I'd ever hire family again. Sarah was promoted to operations director, the legitimate version of the title Mom had stolen. Marcus became our chief technology officer, a role that recognized his loyalty during the crisis. The 40,000 Mom stole was partially recovered through the legal settlement, though much had been spent on her failed conspiracy. I decided not to pursue the total amount, choosing peace over prolonged litigation. The money mattered less than the lesson learned about trust boundaries and the price of misplaced family loyalty. Therapy became non-negotiable for me. Dr. Brennan, a specialist in family trauma and narcissistic abuse, helped me understand the patterns I'd been blind to for 32 years. Mom's behavior wasn't new. It had just escalated when she saw an opportunity. The guilt manipulation, the boundary violations, the sense of entitlement to my achievements, all classic narcissistic personality disorder symptoms. The hardest part was processing the grief, not just for the mother I'd lost, but for the mother I'd never actually had. The supportive, sacrificing parent I'd believed in was partly real, but mostly constructed to maintain control. Every sacrifice had been an investment in future manipulation, every support a down payment on expected returns. Our clients became even more committed after the crisis. The integrity we'd shown in handling the situation had impressed them more than any marketing campaign could. Morrison Industries signed a 5-year extension, specifically citing their trust in leadership that could navigate such challenges while maintaining ethical standards. 6 months later, I was invited to speak at a conference about family businesses and professional boundaries. The room was packed with entrepreneurs who'd heard the story and wanted to learn from my mistakes. I talked about red flags I'd ignored, the danger of guilt as a business strategy, the importance of legal protections, even with family, especially with family. The most meaningful outcome was the other victims who reached out. Dozens of entrepreneurs shared their own stories of family members who tried to hijack their success. We formed an informal support group meeting monthly to discuss boundaries, healing, and building healthy professional relationships after betrayal. The isolation I'd felt that rainy Monday morning transformed into community. Dad and I rebuilt our relationship slowly but genuinely. He attended company events proud of what I'd achieved, but careful never to overstep. He'd learned his own lessons about boundaries and respected mine completely. When he remarried 2 years later, I was at the wedding, finally understanding why he'd needed to leave to save himself. The company doubled in size over the next 18 months. The publicity from the crisis, while initially unwanted, had established us as a firm with unshakable integrity. Clients knew we'd do the right thing, even when it cost us personally. That reputation brought opportunities we'd never have accessed otherwise. Richard Steinberg's company faced its own consequences. Once our full recordings became public during the legal proceedings, several of his clients pulled their accounts uncomfortable with his predatory practices. His attempt to acquire my company through conspiracy had ultimately damaged his own. There was poetic justice in watching his firm shrink while mine grew. Sarah, Marcus, and Jerome became my inner circle, the family I'd chosen rather than inherited. We'd been through corporate combat together and emerged stronger. When Sarah got married, I was her maid of honor. When Marcus started his own subsidiary company, I was his first investor. When Jerome's visa was approved for permanent residency, we celebrated like he'd won the lottery. The restraining order meant I didn't see Mom for 2 years. Then at a cousin's wedding, I'd reluctantly attended, she was there. Older, smaller, definitely diminished. She approached me during the reception, tears already forming. I listened to her apology, noted the familiar manipulation tactics embedded within it, and walked away. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. They shouldn't be. My definition of success evolved through this experience. It wasn't just about revenue or growth anymore. It was about building something nobody could take away, surrounded by people who supported rather than sabotaged, creating value that extended beyond financial statements. The company was stronger, but more importantly, I was stronger. The word irrelevant still echoes sometimes. Mom had called me irrelevant in my own company in front of my employees. The irony is that her betrayal made me more relevant than ever. Every speech I give, every client we win, every employee we hire knows the story of the founder who fought for her company and won. I became the opposite of irrelevant. I became unforgettable. The deepest lesson wasn't about business or family or trust. It was about self-worth that couldn't be manipulated, success that couldn't be stolen, and strength that came from surviving the worst betrayal imaginable. Mom had given me life, but she'd also given me the ultimate test of character. I'd passed. 2 years after the incident, the company was valued at $5 million. The team had grown to 50 employees across 3 offices. We'd won industry awards, been featured in major publications, and become a case study at 2 business schools. The mother who tried to steal everything had inadvertently created the adversity that forged something unbreakable. I keep one photo from that time in my desk drawer. Not of Mom, but of the 17 employees standing in the lobby blocking her from entering, choosing loyalty over safety. When imposter syndrome creeps in, when I doubt my worth or relevance, I look at that photo. These people risked everything for me, for what we'd built together. That's the family that matters. The story spread throughout the business community, becoming a cautionary tale about family businesses, professional boundaries, and the danger of unchecked entitlement. I received speaking invitations from around the country, entrepreneurs wanting to hear how to protect themselves from the people closest to them. The pain had transformed into purpose. Mom's flying monkeys, the relatives she'd turned against me, gradually reached out with apologies. Some were genuine, horrified at being manipulated. Others just wanted association with my success. I forgave them all, but kept my distance. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting the ease with which they'd believed the worst about me. The most unexpected outcome was the relationship that developed with Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister. She shared stories about their childhood, the grandmother who treated her daughters as extensions of herself rather than individuals. The dysfunction was generational, passed down like a cursed heirloom. Patricia had broken free. Mom never did. 3 years post-crisis, I stood in our new headquarters, a building we'd purchased rather than leased. No one could change these locks without my permission. The company that Mom had tried to steal for $2 million was now worth $8 million. The irrelevant daughter had built an empire from the ashes of betrayal. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if Mom's betrayal was the best thing that happened to the company. It forced us to implement better systems, build stronger relationships, and establish unshakable boundaries. It revealed true allies, exposed fake ones, and created a story that bonded us beyond typical corporate culture. The final irony came in a message from Mom through her lawyer. She wanted to know if I'd hire her as a consultant, arguing that her actions had ultimately made the company stronger. Even after everything, she still felt entitled to benefit from my success. The narcissism was breathtaking in its consistency. I didn't respond. Some people never change, never learn, never grow. They remain trapped in patterns of entitlement and manipulation, unable to see beyond their own needs. Mom was one of those people. But I wasn't. I'd grown, learned, evolved through the fire she'd set. I'd become everything she said I wasn't and couldn't be. The company continues to thrive. New employees hear the story during orientation, understanding from day one that loyalty is earned, integrity is non-negotiable, and family doesn't automatically mean trust. We've become known not just for excellent marketing, but for exceptional culture built on the foundation of surviving the ultimate betrayal. Sometimes young entrepreneurs reach out dealing with their own family business crises. I tell them what I wish someone had told me earlier. Love doesn't entitle anyone to your success. Blood relation doesn't grant automatic access to your achievements. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time, not the 100th. The mother who pushed me out of my own office, who called me irrelevant, who changed the locks on my dream, had taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Not through her sacrifice or support, but through her betrayal. She taught me that the only person who could make me irrelevant was me, and I chose to be essential, undeniable, unbreakable instead. This story isn't about revenge or even justice. It's about resilience, about building something so strong that even the deepest betrayal couldn't destroy it. It's about choosing your family based on loyalty rather than DNA. It's about success that comes not despite adversity, but because of it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on family boundaries in business. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and professional integrity? How do you maintain boundaries with loved ones who feel entitled to your success? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it helped you recognize patterns in your own life, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in dealing with family members who confuse love with ownership. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to breakthrough. Remember that your achievements belong to you alone, no matter who tries to claim them. Stay strong, set boundaries, and never let anyone call you irrelevant in your own story.